What is Kali Yuga? Can you explain?
Yes.
What is this time?
Okay. In the classical yogic understanding, but also in the Western classical Greek understanding. In fact, throughout the whole world, in the what's called the axial age, thousands of years ago, it was understood that time is circular. And time is divided into different yugas, four main yugas, which are like eras or epochs. And these historical periods have an entropic relationship to one another. So we begin with what they usually refer to as the full moon, the 16 full degrees, in which everyone is an avatar. Every inhabitant of the world is in God consciousness, with all the siddhis, all the powers and the capacities that brings. And then gradually there is a fall. And there we go from a golden age to a silver age, but the silver age is still a one in which everyone has soul consciousness, if not God consciousness. But then there is a fall from that, and we enter a copper age, and there's a destruction. The world in the golden age is one continent, Pangaea they call it. And then at this point of destruction, it splits into the 7 continents that we have now. And 7 is not an accident either, as perhaps we can talk about, because that's a very important magical number in yoga. But in the Copper Age, there are fewer beings who are able to sustain that vibrational frequency of true divine presence. And so there's a gradual fall, but there are still higher civilizations. We have only the relics of a few of them now, like the pyramids of Egypt and those kinds of temples and megaliths and Stonehenge, those things. But we don't know really what they symbolized and how the people lived. And then we entered Kali Yuga. And this is called the Dark Age, the Iron Age. It's the age in which we are now in ego consciousness for the first time, no longer even in soul consciousness. The ego is a derivative of the soul. And the ego for the first time is consciousness identified with the material body. Before that, consciousness was always at a soul level and transcendent and connected to angels and to higher beings and to have the power to shift into different levels and frequencies of consciousness. But once we entered Kali Yuga, we lost that power, and the ego, because of its identification with the mortal body, came the fear of death. And the fear of pain and of aging and all of that, and the loss of the sense of being at home in the world. Right? And then as Kali Yuga continued over thousands of years, and it started with a number of prophets who came in those early days to give us the awakening. That's when yoga began, and that's when Buddha came shortly after that, and the Mahavira and various others. And you also had the awakening of the Greeks and the Persians, Zoroaster, Zarathustra, and the Taoists in China. So you had still an awakening, but then that gradually became lost, and the cultures began to become more aggressive, and more warlike, and more selfish, greedy, envious, and more fearful. And less intelligent and less coherent, until we now have reached this point at the end of Kali Yuga where we have such a dumbed down population that people cannot even recognize what is going on. There's a mass die-off, there's genocide happening, there are incredible things, but most people are in denial of them because they can't handle the truth. You see, that's the main thing of the ego. It prefers ignorance to knowledge. And so we're at a time when very few people are willing to know everything that we need to know in order to change the situation for the better. So we're at the end of that period where almost all, even egos, let alone souls, are exhausted. And they have no more creativity, which is why you see there's a death of culture. There's very little classical music, drama, any of the arts, they have all fallen. Even the cinema, the last art, is now mostly very trashy kind of material. And there's a loss of all moral values, all of the traditional ways that society was able to sustain itself with divine masculine and feminine energies that are all lost now in transgenderism and all of that. And so people are so confused, and they have no more values, and they feel so cynical. And so depressed and so nihilistic that they are actually captured by what we call the lower death drive, which is a drive in the ego that wants to die. When it can't handle life and sustain its happiness, which it no longer can, even with drugs or whatever else they want, they want to get out. And so there's a massive epidemic of suicide in the world today. I don't know if you're aware of that.
And it's rising.
Yes, and violence and every other kind of perversion and of antisocial behavior. And the world is now run by psychopaths. And they are creating ever more monstrous tyrannies, dictatorships, and bringing about global destruction, which we can see before our eyes.
Yes.
So that's what the end of Kali Yuga is. But the blessing is this. At the end, because it is so terrible, people are beginning to awaken, which they wouldn't otherwise. They would just go into their, virtual realities and become happy slaves, of the system. But they're not even able to do that. So there is a massive awakening, and you are part of that, and you are awakening others, which is wonderful. And it's very good karma, and it will help your own vibrational frequency because you receive grace. That divine intelligence that is responsible for all of this is also more and more visible, more perceptible by those who turn to God or Brahman or the Buddha mind, however you want to refer to that ultimate reality. It's more accessible now. And so people are able to rise in a very short time to the state of Jivan Mukti, or liberation in life, and be able to return the world to that vibrational frequency. So this is the moment in which everything is polarized. The darkest of the dark, but also the brightest light is now available to those who want it. And so it's a beautiful, auspicious moment. So they call the end of Kali Yuga a fifth Yuga. It's a secret Yuga that is referred to by the Kumbh Melas, the great gatherings of the yogis. This is the Kumbh Mela at the end of time, when all of those who had been yogis or avatars in past lives and lost that return to that awakening and their own illumination again, and return to God consciousness.